just want to point out something. If we go back to the original problem, the question is asking us to find the width of the mat, nothing to do with maximum or minimum. So now that I have an expression, and in that expression I know that x represents the width of the mat, the dimensions of that mat, I now know that I don't have to complete the square. I simply have to solve for x. So we're going to use the trial and error method to solve for x. First thing I'm going to do is, actually before I even use the trial and error method, can you see anything that I can do to this equation to simplify it, to make it easier for myself before I use trial and error? Is there anything I can do? Yes. Yes, good. I'm going to divide the entire expression by 4. So I have 0 is equal to x squared. Positive 40x divided by 4 is positive 10x. And negative 96 divided by 4 is negative 24. That's a lot easier to work with. Smaller numbers, less possibilities. So now I'm going to do trial and error. I can break up my x squared to have x times x, and I can break up 24 to be 12 times 2. So trial and error, we can't forget this method. It comes in handy. When I cross multiply, I know that 12 times x is 12x, 2 times x is 2x. If I'm trying to get positive 10x, I have to make my 12 positive and my 2 negative. So I have to go ahead and make this positive and this negative. So I come up with binomials x plus 12, x minus 2 is equal to 0. But those are two possible dimensions. So to actually solve for x, I have to set both equations equal to 0. X plus 12 is equal to 0. X minus 2 is equal to 0. And now I have to solve for x. So we bring the x over to the other side, the positive 12 over. X is equal to negative 12, and x is equal to positive 2. However, if I tell you, Kathleen, can you go measure negative 12 centimeters for me? Is that possible, to measure negative 12 centimeters? No. You can never have a negative length or measurement. So, whenever you have an option and you're talking about measurements and you have a negative number, you're going to write inadmissible since we cannot have a negative measurement. So that leaves us with only one option. Therefore, the width of the mat is 2 centimeters. 2 centimeters on each side. And if you really think about it, 8 plus 2 plus 2, or 8 plus 4, that's going to give me 12. And 12 plus 2 plus 2 is going to be 16. And when you multiply those numbers together, you are going to have a total area of 192. Okay, so we can always check our answer by plugging it back into the original question. Okay, so this is a more challenging one. Questions like this involve a diagram, and you have to, it's not enough to just give me an explanation in words. You have to show me algebraically how you're coming up with the dimensions. You can always, math and logic are really closely tied together. You can always come up with a logical solution by punching in random numbers. But if you can't back it up with algebra or with the quadratic formula, you're not going to get any marks on your test, okay? So it's really important to practice what is in your unit guide. One final question that doesn't involve completing the square, because I wanted to give you one more example of a non-completing the square type question, if I let the first number be represented by x, and y is going to represent the second number, how can I say, if x is one even number, how can I express the next even number after x, the consecutive even number? What would I have to add to x in order to get another even number? Gabriella? 2. Good. So y is going to just be x plus 2. So the two numbers are x and x plus 2. It says the product of two consecutive even integers is 288. So I'm going to take the first integer, even numbers. X times x plus 2, the product of those two even numbers are going to give me 288. Now, if we actually distribute, x times x is x squared. 2 times x is positive 2x. That's going to be equal to 288. Now, I'm not completing the square, so there's no purpose in keeping these numbers divided. So I want to bring everything over to the other side. So I want to take this 288, move it to the other side, so I have a complete trinomial, a complete quadratic equation. X squared plus 2x minus 288 is equal to 0. I have a quadratic equation. Can someone tell me what to do next? How am I going to solve for x? What method am I going to use? Any ideas? Joshua, yeah. Trial and error, yes. We're going to break up, just like in the last question, I'm going to break up my A term, I'm going to break up my C term, and keep in mind that C is negative 288. So I'm going to do this for you because it involves kind of bigger numbers than you're used to. X squared always breaks up into x times x. 288, however, on the other hand, I know that 18 times 16 is going to give me 288. When I cross multiply, I'm going to get 18x and 16x. However, I'm trying to get the sum to be equal to my middle term. So if my sum is going to be positive 2x, that means the 18 has to be positive, the 16 has to be negative. X has to be positive, the 16 has to be negative. So very similar process now to what happened in the last question. I'm going to take my two binomials, so x plus 18 and x minus 16 is equal to 0. I think that's what I had. X plus 18 and x minus 16. Yep. Have the two binomials, set it equal to 0, and now I'm going to solve for x. Take my first binomial, x plus 18 is equal to 0, so x is going to be equal to negative 18. This is okay because I'm not talking about measurements, so we're just talking about numbers, so x can be a negative number. X minus 16 is equal to 0, so x is equal to positive 16. So there are two possible values for x, okay? But remember, these do not represent the same situation. They're two different situations. The reason I know that, if I go back to my original slide, I know that the first number is going to be x, but the second even number is represented by the expression x plus 2. So I need a y term to match up with each x term. So we're going to start with negative 18. When x is equal to negative 18, you have to remember to say y is equal to x plus 2. So y is equal to negative 18 plus 2. So when x is equal to negative 18, y has to be equal to negative 16. Those are the two numbers that are going to multiply to positive